Well, what a piece. Delius is a mass of life. And joining me for this Delius Society interview to talk about it is Neil Ferris, who's been preparing the BBC Symphony Chorus for a performance of A Mass of Life at the Proms, a performance also featuring the London Philharmonic Choir. Well, Neil is chorus director of the BBC Symphony Chorus, but he's been associated in one way or another with a long string of other choirs. He's currently conductor of the professional chamber choir Sonoro and is festival conductor of the Leith Hill Music Festival south of London, whose choral music is at the heart of things, of course. And Neil's work has meant conducting many leading UK orchestras and has taken him round the world to conduct many a masterclass. So greetings to you, Neil Ferris.
Thank
And
you, Andrew.
I first of all must ask, I mean, you get dished out with choral works, which you have to prepare the BBC Symphony Chorus for, and you don't have any option about this, but you're told, hey, Neil, it's going to be a massive life at the Proms. Your reaction to that is what?
Well, not to the one when when you said "what a piece" to start with, because I mean, yes, what a piece, and that's why I laughed. I certainly didn't laugh, but I went wow. I suppose the recording that Mark did in Bergen really drew my attention to the piece, which, to be completely honest about, I was aware as it of his existence, but didn't know anything about it at all. And when it was being proposed, I just went, wow,
Uh,
because I'd heard bits of the recording and I'd got a copy of the recording myself. So, yes, filled with lots of excitement.
well, we'll come on to that in due course. And the Mark you're referring to, of course, is Sir Mark Elder, who's conducting this Proms performance. But okay, not a familiar work to you. A wow nonetheless. But how far back do we go in your musical life to look at your interest in Delius? How far back does it go?
Well, um, like Delius, I was a violinist. Before I suppose, went to the dark side or something like that. And I do remember playing, I think, either one of the sonatas, but I think it possibly the Romance. And then in my some of my playing days, the shorter orchestral works, which would be the Walk to Paradise Garden and On Hearing the First Cuckoo in Spring and that kind of thing. And I think I've in my student days I conducted the intermezzo from Fenimore and Gerda. So I do remember that, and
Piling up, it's piling up.
and then little again little choral pieces, the wordless ones, Summer Night on the River,
Yeah.
not the High Hills wordless ones, the Summer Night on the River, those two pieces. So that's my sort of my brief experiences with Delius.
But your experiences with his choral music couldn't possibly have prepared you for the challenges of a massive life. I mean, really, really.
No, it's extraordinary, and of course, lots of composers are simply given monikers for their nationality. But Delius, apart from being a Yorkshireman, his nationality is very, very fluid, and so therefore the discoveries of what his journeys of life, how that got into his music, is very much sort of played out in this extraordinary piece. So
Well,
a lot of learning and a lot of understanding to go into enjoying this wonderful piece of music.
we'll come on to that cosmopolitan side to Delius's life in a moment. I'm just wondering, though, you've got lots of very experienced choral singers in the BBC Symphony Chorus, some of them who've been around for decades, and I wonder if any of them were able to say to you, "Yes, we've done this before, and I remember it as a great
Well,
event." Did that happen?
we have extraordinary members who run an archive, and so our archive is very detailed. So I could go to one of them and say, Can you just give me a bit of help here? And there are recollections of singing the piece. We last did it in yes, in 1988, I think, at the Proms. And there are a couple that have sung it before, the piece. So yeah, there are recollections. The scores when we got them were really interesting because obviously this is very much a Thomas Beecham piece, and I have the scores arrived and there are lots of corrections in red ink in the vocal scores that actually aren't corrections. They are so I'm not quite sure how they got into the parts and so indelibly written into the parts and so definitely written into the parts, but lots of sort of reworking of the vocal scores, sort of improvements on voice leading and taking some of the bass parts to the actual orchestral bass parts that are not in the original. So we had to just sort of make sure that what we were doing was the right version. And I have a suspicion that when it was done a lot under Sir Thomas Beecham, that lots of these sort of things came in, but I don't know exactly who by. So that was our first interesting discovery to make, is to make sure we're actually doing the right notes.
Well, that must have been very tricky indeed.
Well, especially as written in red ink, yes. So, but we've we are ignoring all of those additions into the score.
Right. Okay. So A Mass of Life, pretty new to you,
Yeah.
and of course to a lot of people who are listening, watching us now. It will be an unfamiliar piece. So let's first of all get inside that title, A Mass of Life, which suggests something sacred in the conventional religious sense, but that's not what it means. Just explain to us that title, Neil.
I think Mark Elder said to me, I love everything about this piece except the title, because the title is completely wrong. And he's right about that, because it misleads people into thinking what it might be. A Mass of Life has absolutely no religious connection whatsoever. It is Nietzsche. It is, it is anti-religion in terms of celebrating the human spirit and living the life that you have on this earth, and self-improvement and self-perpetuation, and live the life you have on this earth because that's the one you've got. And so when you are looking at a title that says a mass, then that's the misleading thing. But I think it's also very clever, because it actually is a way of doing the flip, and it's a way of owning what Delius Nietzsche is saying about religion, owning that and say, this is the earthly life you have, and celebrate it, and the power of the human spirit.
Well, yes, you used the word celebration there, and of course we very often say that a mass in church is a celebration,
Mm-hmm.
and here we have a celebration of life.
Yes.
But I mean, Delius, I mean, he fell for Nietzsche, the philosopher, writer Nietzsche, in a very, very big way. Supposedly, when he first came across it, also sprach Zarathustra, he devoured it in, as it were, one sitting. I'm not sure if you can do it in one sitting, but he was absolutely
Yeah.
gobsmacked by it.
Yeah. And that comes through in the piece very much, because it is glorious, glorious music, and it is at one powerful, and in the next moment it is exquisite beauty and tenderness, and all the facets of living life are celebrated
Yeah,
in this
and
piece.
it grabs you by the throat from bar one. I mean, that's an extraordinary start, isn't it?
Yes, and uh, Mark was saying that when we start, we've got to shock everybody. Everybody, to those who have experienced bliss in the, I suppose, even in the pieces that I mentioned earlier, are going to be absolutely blown away by the horns screaming at them in the first bar, and then the chorus coming in with an absolute bang in the second bar, and straight away you're in a completely different world if that's the only Delius you've experienced before.
Yeah. So, okay, it's a celebration of life. It's anti-religious, but not always easy to understand the words that are being set here. And I wonder how you've tackled that dimension
Yeah.
in the way that you've been able to. And I wonder if the music in itself helps explain the words, or I mean, Delius wasn't a great word painter as such. He dealt more in moods. But does
Yes.
the music help you with the words?
Well, I think the most helpful way of understanding it is in what you've just said, in sort of painting in moods and colours. Um, the it's it's as if the music is backlit. Sorry, the text is backlit by the music, and you are taken through these ideas and moods, or even places. I mean, you get to see wood nymphs dancing, and you get to do a dance through a forest and the thickets, and see animals all around you, and so you're taken to places, and underpinning all of that is the idea of the striving for um, uh, uh, when I say self-improvement, I don't mean it to sound quite as glib as that, but when you understand the Norwegian influences, when you're understanding about the mountains, that you are climbing these mountains, or constantly being encouraged to go back up the mountain. And so it's very appropriate that there's this gorgeous and wonderful, brilliant recording from Bergen, that you are taken to the mountains yourself by the music. So you're always put in the place or the mood, but and in that it helps you understand where you are. And it takes away from the complications of Nietzsche, which I couldn't even begin to. Well,
Yeah.
you start making progress, and you think you're getting somewhere, and then you go, okay.
Yeah.
But if one understands it in this in two ways we've talked about. One is the actual places that I've talked about, and the backlit nature of the word setting. But the other one is that for the text talks a lot about Mittag and Mitternacht, so midday and midnight, and the juxtaposition of those two. And for every midnight, that there is another midday to come, and you keep on going. And I think that idea as well really helps, that you're never too introspective when it's in the sleepier moments or the darker moments that the text goes to, is that for every midnight there is another midday coming. And it's in those two fundamental ideas that we've been able to understand what it's all about.
I mean, it's fascinating that so much of your work is preparing uh, music for other people to conduct in the actual performances, and yet you have to get absolutely inside a piece of music and look at its background so that you can effectively prepare a chorus for a situation like this. And by the sound of things, from what you said there, you do like to talk about the background to a piece of music. It's not just a question of starting at bar one and working at the music full stop.
Yes, and I don't have a set order in which I do things. And sometimes we really just have to work so fast that we have to get straight on to learning it. But still, in learning it, you can learn faster by having a bit more understanding, or dropping in bits of understanding of what's going on with the piece. With this, we've just dug a bit deeper just so to explain what's going on, because the note's hard enough, and we've got a few extraordinarily clever people in the in the chorus, and one of our altos helped us out with just doing a brief exposition on the Also sprach Zarathustra and the idea of the Übermenschend, those kind of things. Just as brief. She was great, and it just gave us an idea on what this piece ultimately is all about, and certainly not a mass.
How wonderful you've got a singer who could stand up and do that. How
Yes.
absolutely true. Well, look, you mentioned the cosmopolitan Delius earlier, and what has he got in his background? He's not just got Bradford and Yorkshire, he's got Germany and the United States and Norway and then France and so on and so forth. I mean, do we hear the cosmopolitan Delius in this music? Can we say it's cosmopolitan music? And hopefully you'll mention Wagner somewhere.
Yes. Well, there you are. You've done it for me. Thank you very much. Yes, Wagner and Grieg as well. And I mean, I was reading a while ago that Delius very much enjoyed his time in Norway and met Ibsen as well, and actually some of the ideas of Ibsen follow naturally into Nietzsche as well. So that is definitely there. I mean, and you hear mountain horns in the piece. I mean, it is as literal as that, but definitely Wagner. But some you can hear the colours and the pastoral aspects of what we might associate with more of his Englishness in his music, that I referenced earlier, the pieces I referenced earlier. But it's most definitely Wagnerian in what we are talking about. And having just done early Mahler, Das klagende Lied, which we did a couple of days ago, which has Wagnerian influences, you can sort of start to blend all of that together.
So, technical challenges. Weighted question here. How well does Delius write for the human voice? I ask myself.
He writes incredibly well for the human voice, but knows how to extend it. I mean, it's extraordinarily demanding, but not all the way through. I mean, it's the same with the baritone part as well. It's a huge, the protagonist. It's a huge baritone part, but I mean, it sits in the voice beautifully and wonderfully.
I think it's interesting you say that because I listening to it, I'm thinking, gosh, that must be tricky technically, and yet you're saying it stretches, but it
Yeah,
doesn't demand too
yeah.
much.
It really demands a lot of our sopranos and altos. There's a whole movement that is wordless, and it's actually harder singing wordless than it is.
Why? Why?
That's a very good question. Because with text, you're naturally carried through because of the libretto or the poetry. You're given direction and purpose, and wordless it's very difficult because of the breaking up of the action between consonants and vowels, that your body is actually sort of staying moving. But if it's wordless and just repetitive la 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 la, you can really begin to, unless you're really careful, and because it's demanding register wise, is that it's very difficult not to become tight when you're singing that. And he sends the sopranos up for a couple of top C's in that movement as well. I mean, he sends the sopranos up twice into a top C in the first chorus. But it's not it's within the bounds of reasonableness, if you like. I mean, it's wonderful to sing. The other challenging aspect is harmonically, because when you practice it slowly or you hear it, it makes complete and utter sense. But actually, there's a lot of harmonic progression compression. So you'll accelerate harmonically through, other composers. It might play out in another bar or two. You're squeezed in with some harmonic progressions within a single bar that might play out anywhere else a little longer. So slowly it makes sense, but then when you've got to sing it at tempo, you're sort of like dashing through a harmonic chicane. So that's the other really difficult aspect about it, but
Yeah.
it all makes sense. So
Yeah.
when you're singing it, you might be going or certainly to read it, or when it's not really into the voice, you might be going what am I being asked to sing? But it all makes sense.
Yeah. Well, the other thing to consider here is it's what 100 minutes it's down as in the
Mhm.
Proms publicity. It's a very, very long, technically demanding piece for the singers. And I wonder how you can possibly prepare a choir for the physical demands of
Yeah.
keeping going for that length of time. And have you talked about that with them?
We've more specifically, we've talked. I've talked with Mark about how we manage the day before and the day of the prom. So the concert is on Monday, the 18th of August. On the Sunday, the 17th, we have two rehearsals. We have a 6 hour day of rehearsals, putting it together with the orchestra, and it's about how we manage that day and then the afternoon. And it's not possible to sing it all on the afternoon, even though we need to get into the hall and check balance, and so that's not going to be possible. That's what we're going to have to manage very hard. In terms of the stamina is provided by singing it well. The more you get it onto your body, the more technical information help that we can give our choruses about how to sing it well, the less toll is going to take on their voices, and that's what we've been focusing on. I mean, yeah, you got to learn the blooming notes, but also how to sing it well.
Fine. Well, if we mentioned Sir Mark Elder's recording of this with the Bergen forces, I mean, I mean, this is a typical situation where you're preparing a particular work for a particular conductor. If they've recorded the work in question, do you pore over it for clues as to how to do it,
Yeah.
or is there anything of Neil Ferris in the preparation that you made for this particular concert?
Well, two things on that, I suppose. In the preparation of any work for a conductor, I either listen to recordings if they've recorded it, but or some conductors like to send me some information. Sometimes I'll ask for some information, and other times it's incumbent upon me to prepare the chorus to know it really well and to teach it to them really well. And I will sometimes do tempi slightly this way or slightly that way of what might be the metronome mark, give them some ideas. So I've worked it into their body that it's not always exactly the same. But as long as they know a piece really, really well, then when they come to meet the conductor, that they're able to go with, and it doesn't matter if they don't get their tempo straight away. We're not worried about that. It's being flexible enough to get it the next time because they know the piece well enough. So that is sort of my primary thought and objective. But with this recording, you've got a document, if you like, of and since it's fairly recent as well, that you're I went through with Neville Creed, my co-chorus master on this project from the London Philharmonic Choir, and we'd both been listening to the recording, and we'd just about got noted down the same tempi in our scores. So you can get these metronomes now that you can sort of like tap in what the pulse is, and then it gives you a reading. So we were pretty close, and when I was talking through the piece with Mark, he was asking me, so yeah, and roughly what speed did I do on the recording, so I can actually say, oh well, actually it sounded like this tempo marking, and so that was quite amusing for the few of us to do it that way. But yeah, in terms of nuances and stretches, you can get an idea. But I mean, we've had two rehearsals with Mark already, and not absolutely is this everything the same, because you've got different conditions, you've got different choirs, and every conductor will change what they do slightly from one performance to the next.
Well, you talk about bringing the choir to a state of readiness in knowing the music ready to work with the conductor, but we're talking here about the proms
Yeah.
and quite a number of demands on this chorus through the proms. I mean, that must be an extra challenge here, making sure they're ready for each new challenge.
The main challenge for them is that we have to pre-rehearse quite a lot because we haven't got time in between each prom to actually start a piece, learn it, and then perform it. So the main challenge is, you know, pre-rehearsing and then getting back to it. We have a couple of rehearsals next week before we meet the orchestra, because we've had 8 rehearsals on it already, but they were in June. So it's re-entry. I mean, we've been encouraging our choruses to listen to the glorious recording that does exist. I mean, there are actually a couple of really fine recordings out there. David Hill and Richard Hickox have done some super recordings as well. But in terms of, you know, getting the tempi right and just having an oral imprint, so nothing is a surprise. So they're expecting to sing, even though they might need reminding of a few bits. That there's this oral imprint that they're just expecting to sing into that.
Yeah. Well, look, this work emerged at around about the same time as Dream of Gerontius, about the same time, roughly speaking, as Mahler 8. Uh, you know, wonderful works of the choral repertoire. And I'm wondering, now that you're so conversant with A Mass of Life, where you would place it. Not necessarily in comparison with those two works, but with major choral works of that period. I mean, does it stand up next to the giants of that period?
Yes, it does. In my humble opinion, as they say, it absolutely does. I think it's an extraordinary piece of music, and when I first listened to it, I was just utterly captivated all the way through. And I mean, in some ways, it's very reminiscent of Mahler 8 and the sheer scale of it, and not quite so much in the sort of the actual orchestration, but for us and their vocal demands, and particularly the opening. It's very reminiscent. I mean, part one of Mahler 8, you'd start at 100 miles an hour and drive too fast around the corners, and that's what it feels like vocally. And certainly the opening chorus for us feels like that.
Yeah. It's just such wonderfully passionate music. It
I
does
agree.
it does just sweep you away.
Yeah.
It's bound to make an impression. Well, we compare it there with Mahler 8. I suppose there can't be huge numbers of performances of Mahler 8 because it is a challenge of getting it all together. Uh, but are there any added obstacles, would you say, to more performances of A Mass of Life? I mean, what's stopping there being more performances?
I think some of it is in perception of what it might be about. I think uh, it starts with an absolute blaze. It finishes with a blaze and then sort of quietly melts away beautifully and extraordinarily atmospherically as well. But the problems are in the scale and just the understanding of the piece. It is in many ways, in the end, it is actually harder than Mahler 8, even though Mahler 8, the first part is extraordinarily demanding. But the quality of the orchestration, the way you're taken to in mood and spirit, is a match for any of the great 20th century choral masterpieces.
Well, it sounds, thinking back to where we started, as if your personal view of Delius has changed quite dramatically through the experience of working on it.
Well, just more understanding, I think, like anything, the more time you spend with a piece of music, The more you understand it, the more you understand the influences, the person, and uh, I'm yeah, genuinely, completely and utterly blown away by this piece of music. It's
Well,
extraordinary.
that's you and me both.
Great.
So look, let's make sure that people have the details about this prom performance. This is the
Yeah.
18th of August at 7:30 p.m. in the evening UK time. Delius is A Mass of Life. We have the BBC Symphony Chorus, of which you're the director, have the London Philharmonic Choir, the BBC Symphony Orchestra. We have the soloist Jennifer Davies, soprano, Claudia Huckle, the mezzo, David Butt Philip, the tenor, and Roderick Williams, of course, the baritone soloist, and as we've been saying, Sir Mark Elder conducting. So look, make a date for then or catch up with it as you can online. Well, let's finish by talking a little bit about your future engagements. What's coming up for Neil Ferris in the next few months?
Uh, Thank you. That's very kind. I just want to add one more thing. You listing the concert and the end of our conversation about why isn't it done much more. What's really interesting is that it's sold really well, and so do get your ticket. But I know it's sold very, very well. So there is an appetite for this piece, and anyone who goes along is going to be blown away by it. So turning to what's coming up, well, as soon as we finished Mass of Life, the BBC Symphony Chorus is straight on to preparations for a performance of Bliss, the Beatitudes, on September the 7th,
There you are.
in the Proms as well, under our chief conductor, Zachary Oromo. And again, another wonderful, amazing 20th century English choral work. And I'm very happy that the Proms are prepared to program these pieces, and there's definitely an appetite for it. But Zachary is a wonderful interpreter of English music, and I'm looking forward to that very much indeed. And last night of the Proms on the 13th of September, the usual fun and festivities. And I still think there are one or two surprises for us, even though we've rehearsed a couple of pieces. I think there's something coming that will be a lot of fun, but I can't say any more. And then definitely a rest, because it will have been by then a very big and wonderful and fulfilling season, but I will be exhausted.
Well, Neil, you work both with professional singers and with amateurs.
Yeah.
Let's finish with a thought about the particular pleasure of working with amateur singers. I mean, what is in it for you?
I think the wonder and joy of this choral heritage that we are very lucky to have in this country, where it's possible for those who aren't professional to sing in a professional environment and have professional musicians around them, and the mutual understanding and trust and appreciation is extraordinary. We can put anybody who has a love of music from their childhood or a newly discovered love of music, we can put them on the international concert stage as a member of the BBC Symphony Chorus at the Proms, and a lot of our wonderful fellow symphonic choruses in London and the UK. I think that's amazing. It's absolutely extraordinary. And that we all need to sing in whatever style, whatever genre that is your choice, and whether it's in the bath or on a concert hall or out in the park, or we all need to sing. And I think the longer we can keep this wonderful heritage of ours going, the better.
I think we're going to go off and find a friendly bathroom which I can sing in the next 5 minutes, Neil. Wonderfully. Well, yes, you're completely right, of course. One feels a whole load better after a 5 minute sing. Well, Neil Ferris, thank you so much for your time. We wish you all the best for this performance of A Mass of Life, and indeed for all your future work. Thanks very much indeed from everybody at the Delius Society.
A great pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.